Welcome to the Folktale Project. This is Dan Scholz. And today we have part 2 of the classic East of the Sun and West of the Moon. In part 1 of the story on Monday, a young girl was taken by a white bear who turned out to be a handsome prince who was enchanted. And of course, because it's a fairy tale, there's a complication. Which brings us to our current place in the story. The white bear, or the prince, has had to leave because the young girl had exposed him before the time of a year had passed, and now he had to go and be wed to a princess with a nose who was 3 ells long. And he is left with only one clue as to where he's going. It's to his parents' palace that is east of the sun and west of the moon. This is East of the Sun and West of the Moon, Part 2. When she awoke in the morning, both the prince and the castle were gone, and she was lying on a small green patch in the midst of a dark, thick wood. By her side lay the self-same bundle of rags which she had brought with her from her own home. So, when she had rubbed the sleep out of her eyes and wept till she was weary, she set out on her way. And thus she walked for many and many a long day, until at last she came to a great mountain. Outside it, an aged woman was sitting, playing with a golden apple. The girl asked her if she knew the way to the prince who lived with his stepmother in the castle which lay east of the sun and west of the moon, to who was to marry a princess with a nose which was 3 ells long. "How do you happen to know about him?" inquired the old woman. "Maybe you are she who ought to have had him?" "Yes, indeed I am," she said. "So it is you, then," said the old woman. "I know nothing about him but that he dwells in a castle which is east of the sun and west of the moon. You'll be a long time in getting to it, if you ever get to it at all. But you shall have the loan of my horse, and then you can ride on it to an old woman who is a neighbor of mine. Perhaps she can tell you about him. And when you have got there, you must just strike the horse beneath the left ear and bid it to go home again. But you may take the golden apple with you." So the girl seated herself on the horse and rode for a long, long way, and at last she came to the mountain, where an aged woman was sitting outside with a gold carding comb. The girl asked her if she knew the way to the castle which lay east of the sun and west of the moon, but she said what the first old woman had said. "I know nothing about it but that it is east of the sun and west of the moon, and that you will be a long time in getting to it if you ever get there at all. But you shall have the loan of my horse to an old woman who lives the nearest to me. Perhaps she may know where the castle is, and when you have got to her, you may just strike the horse behind the left ear and bid it go home again." Then she gave her the gold carding comb, for it might perhaps be of use to her, she said. So the girl seated herself on the horse and rode a wearisome long way onward again, and after a very long time she came to a great mountain, where an aged woman was sitting, spinning at a golden spinning wheel. Of this woman, too, she inquired if she knew the way to the prince and where to find the castle which lay east of the sun and west of the moon. But it was only the same thing once again. "Maybe it was you who should have had the prince," said the old woman. "Yes, indeed, I should have been the one," said the girl. But this old crone knew the way no better than the others. It was east of the sun and west of the moon, she knew that, and you'll be a long time in getting to it if you ever get to it at all, she said. But you may have the loan of my horse, and I think you had better ride to the east wind and ask him. Perhaps he may know where the castle is and will blow you thither. But when you have got to him, you must just strike the horse beneath the left ear, and he will come home again." And then she gave her the golden spinning wheel, saying, "Perhaps you may find that you have a use for it." The girl had to ride for a great many days, and for a long and wearisome time before she got there, but at last she did arrive, and then she asked the east wind if he could tell her the way to the prince who dwelt east of the sun and west of the moon. "Well," said the east wind, "I have heard tell of the prince and of his castle, but I do not know the way to it, for I have never blown so far. But if you like, I will go with you to my brother the West Wind. He may know that, for he is much stronger than I am. You may sit on my back, and then I can carry you there." So she seated herself on his back, and they did go so swiftly. When they got there, the East Wind went in, and said that the girl whom he had brought was the one who ought to have had the prince up at the castle which lay east of the sun and west of the moon, and now she was travelling about to find him again, so he had come there with her, and would like to hear if the West Wind knew whereabout the castle was. "No," said the West Wind, "so far as I have never blown. But if you like, I will go with you to the South Wind, for he is much stronger than either of us, and he has roamed far and wide. Perhaps he can tell you what you want to know. You may seat yourself on my back, and I will carry you to him." So she did this, and journeyed to the South Wind, neither was she very long on the way. When they had got there, the West Wind asked him if he could tell her the way to the castle that lay east of the sun and west of the moon, for she was the girl who ought to marry the prince who lived there. "Oh, indeed," said the South Wind. "Is that she?" "Well," said he, "I have wandered about a great deal in my time, and in all kinds of places, but I have never blown so far as that. If you like, however, I will go with you to my brother the North Wind. He is the eldest and strongest of all of us, and if he does not know where it is, then no one in the whole world will be able to tell you. You may sit upon my back, and then I will carry you there." So she seated herself on his back, and off he went from his house in great haste, and they were not long on the way. When they came near the North Wind's dwelling, he was so wild and frantic that they felt cold gusts a long while before they got there. "What do you want?" he roared out from afar, and they froze as they heard. Said the South Wind, "It is I, and this is she who should have had the prince who lives in the castle which lies east of the sun and west of the moon. And now she wishes to ask you if you have ever been there, and can you tell her the way, for she would gladly find him again." "Yes," said the North Wind, "I know where it is. I once blew an aspen leaf there, but I was so tired that for many days afterward I was not able to blow at all. However, if you really are anxious to go there, and are not afraid to go with me, I will take you on my back and try if I can to blow you there." "Get there I must," said she, "and if there is any way of doing it, I will, and I have no fear, no matter how fast you go." "Very well, then," said the North Wind, "but you must sleep here tonight, for if we are ever to get there, we must have the day before us." And we must have the day before us before we get on to the final part of East of the Sun and West of the Moon on Friday. And here we've seen the journey. She's traveled to and fro and to and fro and to and fro and to and fro many times over in search for her prince. And we'll see on Friday whether or not she will find him. This is Dan Scholz for the Folktale Project. Don't forget that you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, Overcast, anywhere you like to get your podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter at Folktale Project. You can find us on Auto Radio, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, anywhere you like to listen. And you can always head over to folktaleproject.com, where you'll find a new story waiting for you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. As always, thank you so much for listening.